I built a powerful Yu-Gi-Oh deck for $50, and this is what I got. Swordsoul is often revered as one of the most fun, balanced, and powerful Yu-Gi-Oh decks of all time. And in this video, I'm going to be dusting off the deck to show you that it can be a very powerful budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. As always, big dog, I hope that your day is going phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Let's go ahead and jump on in. So I had a couple of goals for this budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I wanted to be able to make something extremely cheap, but yet really powerful and effective. I also wanted to keep in mind that if you are a new player getting into the game, you wanted something easy to learn, but also something that could be hard to master to give you a bit of a challenge. For players that are just on a budget, giving you something that you can switch over to when you're tired of some of your other decks and still have fun playing Yu-Gi-Oh was the goal, and I really think I hit it on the head with Swordsoul. I went on tcgplayer.com and added up the prices of this deck, and you can get it in between that $50 and $75 range. But to be honest, I genuinely want to say you can get this deck for about the $50 range once more of the rarity collection comes out. I think if you hold on a little longer, some of those sought after cards that are super rare will be even cheaper, which will then greatly reduce the price of this deck. Now, a small disclaimer, big dog, you are not going to be getting these cards in this exact rarity. I would strongly advise for you guys to get the lowest rarity of these particular cards available to maximize your price. Also, really quick before we get into this video, I still want to tell you that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Generation mats are still in stock. Go ahead and pick up your mats from TheCaliEffect.com, and don't forget about your Raven Wing sleeves as well. They are phenomenal. I use them in every video. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the deck profile. The main Swordsoul monsters are going to be 3 copies of Swordsoul Moye. A lot of people think that this is the best Swordsoul monster in the deck. I actually think it's the second best Swordsoul monster, but an amazing combo piece. What I think is the greatest Swordsoul monster is Swordsoul Taya. And the reason why is because for turn 1, of course, Swordsoul Moye is the man, but every time after that, Taya is going to be your go-to card because it has so much more flexibility and it has much less of a requirement cost. Now, some Swordsoul players may disagree with me right there. They may say Moye is the top dog, but when you need a top deck, it's normally Taya that you hope for. Next, I'm going to play 3 copies of Swordsoul Long Yuan. This card is pretty straightforward. You're going to be using it to be able to synchro summon into your level 10 monsters, but it does come up to be able to burn your opponent for that 1200 damage. There's also then 3 copies of Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. This card is amazing at going first. It's amazing at going second. What I like about this card is that not only is it a tuner monster, which does come up in situations, it also makes your deck incredibly consistent. Of course, to complement those particular Swordsoul cards, we have 3 copies of Swordsoul Emergence and 1 copy of Swordsoul Blackout. This is pretty much the spell and trap cards that are extremely standard. I want you to think of Swordsoul Emergence as reinforcement of the army, so why wouldn't we play 3? And Blackout, I think, is really, really important because being able to not only get rid of your opponent cards is amazing, but there's going to be times where you want to banish Blackout to get that additional token. Now, in my opinion, the last spot has to be a Swordsoul card. And the reason why I say that this has to be a Swordsoul card is because the numbers work out. Moye, Taya, and Long Yuan all require a Swordsoul or Worm card to be able to activate, which could be true for playing a Tingy monster as well, but they're not searchable through Swordsoul Emergence most of the time. With that being said, I actually decided to play a card that got me 12th place with Swordsoul and nobody believed in it, and is in the rarity collection. I am back on the Swordsoul Iris. Now, the reason why I like Damamama here is because effect negation is really big into Yu-Gi-Oh, and being able to summon her to the side of the field can be catastrophic for the opponent. Not only can she handle extra deck threats, draw you cards, or special summon monsters, she's actually incredibly chunky and sometimes is used as a bridge for so many plays. Of course, big dog, I did call her Damamama for a reason. Anytime that I can play her, I will play her, so I just might be coping. You can go ahead and play another Swordsoul card of your liking. Maybe you want to play Swordsoul Punishment, which is a great card to be able to get rid of your opponent's cards and is a perfect discard outlet, or maybe Swordsoul Sacred Summit, which is also really good at being able to special summon Swordsoul monsters. Players are also playing a ton of field spells, so the Abyss Dragon Swordsoul can be incredibly good right now too. I personally think that you should get every single one of those cards a shot if you can. You may like one or the other. One may be a little bit more successful to you. Don't think what everybody else is doing, think for yourself. Moving on next, it's not Swordsoul without the Tingy monsters just yet until we get more Swordsoul cards. There's 3 copies of Tingy Spirit Ashina. I actually really like this card because it is a free level 7 monster and it gets all of your Tingy Spirit plays going. There's also 2 copies of Tingy Spirit Vishuda. This card is really good at being able to get rid of monsters like Unchained Soul of Rage, which have a destruction effect. This card can easily get rid of it without triggering those type of effects. There's then 2 copies of Tingy Spirit Adara. I love this card immediately because it does allow you to get resources back to your hand. I think that this is a mandatory, the very lowest amount of Tingy monsters that you can play inside your deck. Lastly, you leave this up to debate, but we can play 1 copy of Tingy Spirit Shatana Baby Mama. I think that this card is completely incredible. A lot of players forget about its graveyard effect and it comes up so much. And this card is actually incredible because of Heavenly Dragon Cycle. I play 2 copies of that card. This allows you to be able to dodge effect negations like Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence while also getting you into the cards that you need. I think that this card is very, very important for Swordsoul players. I do not build a Swordsoul deck without this card because it allows the deck to just be so consistent. Following up next, we got our power card. Every Swordsoul deck should probably play Pot of Desires, and the reasoning behind this is that you play multiple copies of every single card in your deck, meaning that this card is essentially just Pot of Greed. Now, one thing you are going to do is you're going to notice a trend with our disruptive Yu-Gi-Oh cards. There's 3 copies of Effect Veiler. I actually really like this card because not only is effect negation really big, you can also normal summon this monster alongside of a Tingy monster in synchro summon into 8, so that gets you out of a bind from time to time. There is then 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, another form of monster negation, really, really good at being able to stop your opponent, and of course can also be used on your turn to be able to stop some good threats. Next is 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. I actually really like Forbidden Droplet now that Castier Arise Heart is banned. There's not a lot of cards that prevent you from sending cards to the graveyard, so this is an excellent card to be able to stop your opponent. But if you guys have not noticed, we play 9 ways of being able to stop monster effects, and if you combine that with your Grandmaster Swordsoul Shishao, you actually naturally have 11 ways to negate monster effects, meaning that the Swordsoul Iris is incredibly easy to summon, and this is actually the same package that I used to get 12 plays, so it's been proven to be effective at some level. From here, we're gonna go ahead and move forward. I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom in Joyous Spring. I think that this is one of the most safest hand traps that you can play because it hits so many decks. And lastly, to spice it up, 2 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being. These cards, or these effect negations plus Nibiru, means 9 times out of 10, you're probably gonna be able to get the Nibiru to nuke the board. For the extra deck, there's really nothing special here. There's 1 copy of Sinister Sovereign Xing Long Yuan. This card's one of the best cards in the deck. 1 copy of Xing Ying. This is another one of the crazy good cards. And 1 copy of Bread on the Floor, which just so happened to have gotten reprinted, making this deck uber cheap. In order to stop light decks and cards like Nibiru the Primal Being, I play 1 copy of Xiaofeng, and there's actually a combo to prevent you from being Nibiru'd in this deck. I'll show it to you because it's starting to become a little bit more important. There's 2 copies of Boxy, a Brightness of the Yangzing. This card's phenomenal. 2 copies of Shishao, 1 Draco Berserker, 1 Adamantipator, Risen Dragite. I think that this is a flex spot, but I think it's way too good to not play this card because there's so many spell and trap cards that want to destroy your monsters. 1 copy of Yazi. Keep in mind, Ash Blossom plus a level 4 can make this card. 1 Shaman and 3 Monk of the Tingy. Now that's pretty much it for the main deck and extra deck, but I'm going to show you a couple of combos that you may want to know about this deck, and I'll also be posting test sense on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me pay my editors. Now, big dog, if I'm going to show you the Nibiru proof combo, this combo is going to require Tingy Spirit Ashina, as well as Tingy Spirit Adara or Tingy Spirit Vishuda. A lot of players start playing Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, which is a card that can help mitigate this. And if you guys are seeing a lot of Nibiru in the format, I would definitely tell you guys, consider dropping some cards, maybe even something like Forbidden Droplet or Pot of Desires, whatever you may feel, to help mitigate that. So these 2 cards are going to be able to prevent my opponent from Nibiruing me, and then an additional card in hand pretty much goes full combo. What you're going to do here is start off by special summoning Tingy Spirit Ashina since you control no monsters, then using it for a link summon into Monk of the Tingy. Activate the effect of your Tingy Spirit Adara to special summon itself to the side of the field, and since you have a non-effect monster, you can banish your Tingy Spirit Ashina to be able to special summon the Tingy Spirit Vishuda, Vishuda. From here, you use both of these monsters for a synchro summon. We can synchro summon into Boxia, Brightness of the Yang Zing. If we do have cards that we want to return back into our opponent's deck, you go ahead and do it. And then you're actually going to use Boxia's effect to destroy the Monk of the Tingy to special summon the Adara. If you guys have not been catching on, that is 4 summons if I'm correct. We're going to go ahead and synchro summon with the Boxia and the Adara into a Xiaofeng. This right here completely prevents our opponent from activating light effects for the duration of the turn, so we are completely free from cards like Effect Veiler and Nibiru the Primal Being, which means we can start off with our combo. Now, remember when I said that Moye was the second best card in this particular situation? If you do not have another Worm or Swordsoul card, this card ain't doing much for you. But Tingy's Spirit Taya actually allows you to extend it further. You'll use Tingy's Spirit Taya. You can banish the Monk of the Tingy to be able to special summon a token to your side of the field. We actually do have multiple options here, which is kind of crazy. If we had a card to destroy, we could synchro summon into Boxia and then use the effect of Taya to send Moye to the graveyard, Boxia to destroy that extra card, which would special summon Moye and get us another synchro 8. But I'm gonna go ahead and assume that we're going first. So right here, we would use both the token and the Taya for a synchro summon into our Swordsoul Grandmaster Xixiao, and then we're going to trigger both the effect of Xixiao and our Taya. We're going to be able to send another Ashina to the graveyard, and the card that you can add to your hand, the choice is yours. You can add a Swordsoul Blackout, or you can go ahead and add a Swordsoul Longyuan, or even better, you can add another Taya to your hand for follow-up. I think that a lot of players sleep on follow-up with this deck. You should always be prepared for the next turn. But let me go ahead and show you the full board. I'm going to add the Longyuan. We're then going to pitch the Ashina to the graveyard again, get out a token, and then synchro summon one more time into, keep in mind, we're locked into worms, so we're going to have to make our Swordsoul Sovereign Xing Longyuan, and this card is actually crazy against so many decks. The next combo I want to show you, big dog, is incredibly basic. It's going to be dependent on how greedy you want to be and if you suspect that your opponent has a Nibiru or not. In this particular combo, I'm going to have Moye and Longyuan in my hand and any worm or Swordsoul monster to be able to get rid of. This particular combo, you are going to start off by normal summoning your Moye, revealing your Adara, and that will give you a Swordsoul token. Next thing you're going to do is use the effect of your Longyuan. You are going to discard the Adara to get you your next Swordsoul token that I almost fumbled. Now, of course, big dog, this is 4 summons, so if you respect that Nibiru the Primal Being, you can also make the Better on the Floor and then the Grandmaster Xixiao. You'll be able to get a resource back and draw a card as well as have a negation. But let's say we don't respect Nibiru. I think most of the time, if you're going first and you don't respect Nibiru, this is the better combo. You are going to synchro summon with your token and your Longyuan into your Sinister Sovereign Xing Longyuan. Don't forget to burn for 1200 damage, putting your opponent at 6800. Then you are going to synchro summon with your Moye and your other token. Make sure that you do it in this order to go into your Grandmaster Xixiao. Activate your Xixiao first, your Longyuan second, and your Moye last. This protects you from most negations in the game. In this particular scenario, you'll be able to draw 2 cards here, and then you can add from your deck to your hand any Swordsoul card. Hypothetically, if the 2 cards that I just so happen to have drawn is something like this, then I would go ahead and search for a card like Swordsoul Blackout. And the reason why is because I have follow-up through Swordsoul Taya. I can go ahead and put 1, 2, 3, 4, technically 5 disruptions on the board. But hypothetically, let's say if I drew something like, I don't know, Imperm and Ash Blossom, instead of searching the Blackout, again, I think it's really good to save your resources. I would search Swordsoul Taya here, which means I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disruptions, and I still have that card to be able to follow up. Regardless of what you do, just know that this deck is on a budget, and I almost completely forgot, this is about $65 for the deck. If you want to make it around that $50 range for right now, the cards that I put in the cart that were expensive were Infinite Impermanence, and they were $5 each for the super rare. If for a reason you cannot afford the Infinite Impermanences, what you could do is that you can substitute the Infinite Impermanences for Bitten Droplet and the Swordsoul Iris because you're losing a ton of negation. What I would consider playing is 3 copies of Emergency Teleport, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and 1 copy of Destrudo Lost Dragon's Frisian. That card is crazy to allow you to synchro summon into 7, which could be Yazi, or that one copy of Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. But that's all that I'm cooking for when it comes to a cheap, powerful budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Swordsoul has easily been one of my favorite decks of all time, and hopefully it finds a place in your heart as a very fun deck to play. Of course, if you want to see more amazing TheCaliEffect content, be sure to check out these videos, and I'll be sure to catch you on the next one.